Hi guys, and welcome back to Adapulse, Cardano's independent media news outlet that's funded by Project Catalyst. Now, today I'm trying something different here. So it's not a project I'm interviewing, it's a person, and that's Johnny Kelly. So many of you know him as Intertree JK on Twitter, so do give him a follow if you're not already. And he's quite active in spaces like Cardano over coffee and the Stoners Club and stuff like that. So I really caught up with him today. Just, find out more about where he's from, a bit more of his background, talk about some of the events that have happened in the past, like the big catastrophic event that happened on the testnet, and but also how he got into Cardano. I mean, what he's doing now, like he describes himself as a tech janitor, so he's helping people with pools. Now that's a nuanced topic, so a lot of people will be interested in that part, but also his contributions in World Mobile because he's running a lot of ENOs, which is Earth node operators for various people, and he's also put out stuff out that has helped me in the past on a technical side, so he's definitely a trusted figure like in that respect. But we also go in some technical realities of Cardano that people don't necessarily want to talk about, like the idea of their pause in block production for 5 minutes. And that's quite an interesting topic. Some people deny it happens or it's a problem. And it's just something that we get addressed. So we really dig into the detail of that. So it's really worth staying for. But then we go on to governance. And he's got a lot of views on that part. And because he may also be a future DRep. And so, we'll also discuss what actually a DRep is. And then finally, at the end, we don't normally do this, but I pin him down on price. So we talk about some future price of ADA in the coming year. So, but anyway, do remember to click the like button and hit subscribe and hit the bell button to get notified as soon as we got content available. So I'm Josh from ATM Stakepool, your presenter for Adapulse for today. Let's just hear the music and talk to Johnny. So I'm sitting right now here with Johnny Kelly. So, Johnny, who the fuck are you and where are you from?
I'm a random Northern Irish guy who sort of landed in Cardano community just by chance. Like it's crazy. This whole thing has been a journey, my friend, and I can take you on that journey if you want.
Where does it start?
It starts in 2020 during the lockdowns, and actually it starts with the PayPal announcing that they were going to start offering cryptocurrency. And I was like, okay, well, PayPal's put a big legitimate stamp on this thing that I've never really paid attention to over the years. Maybe I should look into that. And then I tentatively bought £50 worth of Bitcoin and then freaked out when it went down a little and then went back in later on with a bit more money just to see and then lost again and then came back and then started gaining and went through the whole emotional roller coaster with small amounts of money that people do at the beginning of their crypto journey and then started doing actual research. And I was like, okay, so what else is there here? Because there seems to be a lot of coins. What's going on? So I looked around and I found out about Ethereum, and then I found out about the theory around smart contracts. This is all in 2020, just before Christmas. And I'm like, oh, so there's a whole lot more to it than just this Bitcoin thing. If we go way back to 2009, I watched the Security Now episode.
For my Ada Pulse listeners, that's quite a jump. So we were in 2020 there for a second. And then all of a sudden, let's jump back to 2009.
I heard about Bitcoin right at the beginning when I could have mined thousands of Bitcoin very quickly. And I watched an episode of Security Now with Steve Gibson. And he was talking about, well, we don't really know what the computing that's being done around Bitcoin is actually going into. So there may be an issue where you're giving up your computer processing power to support something that you don't know you're supporting. So maybe give it a pass. So I did, and I never mined Bitcoin, even though I was right there at the beginning. So there you go. That's one of the horror stories. Then I ignored it all the way up until 2020. Then lockdowns happened, and I was looking into things. And then found out about smart contracts, found out about the development, found out about Cardano eventually, and then realized, from my perspective at least, that Cardano seems to be the best laid out potential for development and growth and actual implementation for things from my perspective based on what I looked around at the time.
So it was interesting that you found it in 2009, but
Yeah.
it gives me. So, what is your background though? What is your
From I was very young, I was very much into technology, and I would set up my own little server client setups. I joined a thing called the Microsoft DreamSpark program whenever I was a student. And the DreamSpark program gave you a lot of free access to high level server grade stuff from Microsoft. So I would set up my own little Outlook server in my house just for the crack, email. And I would set up web servers and do things just to play about with infrastructure. And then I did a lot of call center work because that was pretty much what the 2000s was for a lot of people. It was just you go work in a call center, and then as I got closer to my 30s, I branched out into more actual work. Let's say more officey based stuff, not just supporting people but actually doing things. And I ended up in an estate agent, and I was doing their asset management and accounting stuff, and then was offered an IT role there as well, like multi-hat person in the estate agents, just helping out all over the place. Then there was a brief stint in a hosting and programming company called Attain, where I was working with a bunch of different web servers and just making sure that they were secure and stuff, about 40, 50 mix of cloud and in-house stuff, servers. So that was really fun. My background is kind of a mix of customer support, infrastructure in the IT side, and accounting. So I might as well do
yes,
this.
yeah, you seem to. I mean, I first became aware of you within the world mobile space because you were setting up some Earth nodes for other
Yeah.
people. What work are you doing on the Cardano side?
So I found out about Cardano, as I said. I looked into it. I found out, yes, it was at that time, it was very difficult to program for Plutus. And yes, it didn't have this and it didn't have that, and it still hasn't scaled. But like in terms of the trajectory or the long term path, to me, it looked like something that was eventually going to be like the equivalent of like what Linux is now on the internet, right? It's everywhere. You go to your website, it's almost always going to have something underneath it that's Linux related. Maybe not entirely running on Linux, but there'll be Linux in the mix somewhere. And it feels like Cardano has the potential to be like the pervasive thing that just you don't even know it's there in the background, but it's running part of everything, right? So I got into that because as I say, I played about with infrastructure. So I started playing about on testnet, specifically the YOLO net, which was a very brief testnet that existed where epochs lasted 2 hours at a time. And it existed briefly because there was that catastrophic event, if you remember. I'm sure everybody remembers that
Mm.
Adam Dean
Oh,
highlighted the
you
fact.
mean the catastrophic event?
Well, yeah, I mean, it completely killed the legacy testnet and caused them to have to branch out into different tiers of testnet, preview and pre-prod. And then there was this brief YOLO net where they were testing things. And I
That's what
got really,
testnet's for. That's what
yeah,
testnet's
yeah,
for, right? It's for
yeah.
test.
Testnet is to be the first line of defense against fucking up, right? So they fucked up. Let's put it that way. But they fucked up in the most wonderful way in a place that was sanitized and could fuck up. But there's people get emotional attachment to things, and they've been running that test net for so long, and there was like a whole community and an ecosystem around it that people were like lamenting the death of the test net, let's say. And there were people that ran it for many, many months afterwards with just like one or two SPOs running the old test net just because they wanted to keep the dream alive. I think it's gone now though.
Well, there's all sorts of test nets around at the moment. So
Well, yeah, for lots of
pre-prod,
different things.
preview, I lose count
Well,
now. The
it,
guild
it's split from
test
being
net.
just one big test net into being preview and pre-prod because this is more in line with actual development cadence, like software setup and making sure that you have one environment that's different from the one that's mimicking the real one. So I think it was a good transition. It's just a shame that it had to happen off the back of a catastrophic failure. Still, I got interested around that time in jumping into the infrastructure side because something terrible had happened. And if there's one thing that a customer service agent or an accounts person or an IT person loves, is when everything fucks up. Because that's whenever you can go and find out as much as possible about how to fix things, how to set things up, how to make them work. So I was like, I'm in. And I joined the IoT technical community Discord off the back of that. I came up during one of the SPO calls and just very brashly said, "How do I get into YOLONet? Which testnet should I join? Is it YOLONet?" And then set up an SPO there, all manual using the Coin Cashew guide. Hadn't got into the CN tools or guild operator stuff yet, and just worked out the ropes, right, just for the crack. And then I was like, okay, so what can I do with this knowledge? Because I built that knowledge up over the course of a few weeks, and I got confident enough with it. And I was like, do I start an SPO? I was like, well, what's the point? Like, who am I really? Was my thinking. It's like, I'm just
Well,
a guy.
that was my first question to you. Yeah, who the fuck are
Yeah.
you, Johnny?
But listen, I'll talk forever and you'll never get an answer. But I was like, who am I really? Is there any reason that people would delegate to me? What am I doing? Like, do I have a project? Do I have a brand? Do I have this or that? And I was like, do you know what? I reckon it would probably be more useful for me to do a support role than it would be to be the thing itself. Because there was all this discussion around the time about multi-pool operators and about people having, multiple min pool fee income and trying to, game the system. And I was like, well, one way you could counter that is if there are people with a lack of technical knowledge, but they still want to have the brand and presence on chain and be able to be part of the community. Maybe I could do commission-based work where they hold everything. They run the servers, they run the cold keys. I don't have any access.
Well, on that note, how do you secure that you don't have access to the cold keys?
Well, yeah. So this is my whole jam. I became a non-custodial tech janitor, as I like to call it. Classic name would be co-management. Sys ops. No, is it sys ops? Yeah, sys ops engineer. It's not DevOps. I don't do any development. Sorry, I was just thinking about the old world terms. I like tech janitor. It's less arrogant, but so co-management sysops engineer was my thinking, and the way to make sure that people who are my clients hold the code keys is to teach them how to set up through a step-by-step guide their own air-gapped machine and set up their code keys offline, and then take them through steps about what they need to do to help me set up their stuff. So it means that, I feel like I have very little exposure to the risks around SPO management because everything has to be signed off on by the owner of the pool. I'm not the owner of any pool. And I never will be. I won't set up a mainnet stake pool myself. I'll only support others.
A lot of people are against, obviously, this sort of thing that you do. They think it makes it more centralized, and you're a central point of failure.
Well, this is why I highlight the co-management part of things. It's kind of like an educational or training course, but you're being helped out with actual running of your operations at the same time. So you can set up, develop your brand, and if you as an owner want to learn how to take over all the maintenance tasks and make sure to do the monitoring and that yourself and get alerts. I share an alerts channel with every client if they want to view it, and I share all my dashboards with my clients if they want to view them. So they essentially have the entire experience of running it themselves. It's just being co-managed by me. But if I want to hand over, or they want me to hand over that control or the monitoring or the alerting and just become the sole person, they can remove my SSH keys from all their servers and remove me as an admin from any cloud control panel, and then just carry on from there themselves.
Yeah, I mean, to get into the nuts and bolts of it. So
Yeah.
the amount of pools that you've started, how many across all of them? How
It's
many
only
of
been
those
four.
are still running?
It's only been four I've set up with people, and all four are still running, but not necessarily all
Okay.
four. Not all necessarily all four are successful in the way that we measure things here in terms of block production.
Are they
Although
losing
it's
money? Are they paying you fees? Or
no, oh yeah, sorry, I forgot to say that. I'm wholly commission based, so I only make
right,
money when money
then
actually
they make money.
exists. So
But they're paying for the servers, I'm assuming.
they're paying for the servers. They're doing everything they would do them anyway. So I don't really
Right.
view it as me giving them a cost. It's them wanting to do the thing that they wanted to do. but with a little bit of help from someone who understands the technology maybe a bit more and can teach them over time.
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, so moving on from that, yeah, so stake pool is a service. Some people do it, some people are dead against it, and that's just the way it is. So we're not going to be
I
able to solve that argument today.
non-custodial stake pool is a service. I don't offer any servers. I don't rent out anything. They do it all themselves. They set up their own cloud accounts. They set up their own servers, VMs. They give me access with SSH.
Ugh, yeah,
Everything is
come and say,
wholly
come and
owned by
start.
them.
I mean, if it looks like a turd, smells like a turd, might be a turd, you know.
I
But
don't know. This is the big philosophical question, really, is how much involvement is ownership? Anyway,
yeah. Or some would argue it is, you know, you could argue it's just purely identity, but then you could argue that if you're running, if you were running these four pools and you're crucial to their updates and all these kind of things, and
well,
you're
they're crucial to
suddenly,
their updates because if they don't actually engage with the key rotation process every 90 days themselves through their own air gapped offline machine, their pool won't produce a block, won't be capable of producing a block. And I remind them of that every 90 days or just before. And I'm like, okay, it's time. You have to do the thing that you're responsible for doing because I have no access to it. So if you don't do it, your pool is effectively dead. And they do it. They go and they get their offline machine and they log in and they set up a new key and they give me the replacement CAS key and I load it up. And then we carry on. And the wonderful thing about that 90-day setup, or 92-day setup, if we're being technical, is I cannot be given a renewal key at any time in after every 90 days. So I can be fired like that. Just don't give him another key.
okay,
Yeah.
okay. Okay, but let's moving on from that. Like I said, you know, I mean, just to be unbiased, some people are against it, some people do it.
Oh no,
You know,
I
and
totally
it's
agree that people are against it. I just feel
yeah,
like it's more of a hybrid than just simply being a multi-pool operator. Because the theory around the multi-pool operator um, sort of vitriol and judgment is that they're farming the minimum fee. I'm earning a percentage commission off actual earn blocks from multiple different owners distributed across the world. So like it's very different in my mind, but
I
maybe
mean, it's yeah. I don't think that's an argument we're going to get through. It's a very nuanced argument, that one, because when you've
I'm a
got
fan of nuance.
yeah, because you can have you know, some MPOs who are not producing, you know, much value to the community, having multiple pools and rinsing that minimum fee. That is obviously wrong. But then you've got people who are contributing quite a lot and not actually getting much stake, and you know, getting that extra fee just sort of helps pay for what they do, and their value, you know, and what they do is valued.
Well, you'd have to get in that case. You'd have to get into what each of those pools offer the community with their branding and their identity.
But yeah, but you became to prominence with World Mobile, so there, to
From
me
your
it
perspective,
seems,
yes.
from my perspective, definitely, yeah, sure, yeah, of course, you were born a long time before World Mobile, but
I mean, I was also in the Cardano Stoners Club and Epoch's End and other spaces prior to being on the World Mobile side of things. So I appeared at least as a personality in a bunch of different places. But yeah,
that would
um,
explain my cognitive bias of it seemed like an explosion of suddenly you were here.
no,
So
I'd been around
lead,
since I'd been
leading
around
me to
since
my first question: who the fuck are you, Johnny?
aha, yeah. I'd been around since the first Shillamania at Cardano Stoners Club. Shout out to Cardano Stoners Club. Uh,
Right.
and then I started offering them like little recordings of interstitials or jingles they could use, you know, like Shillamania, for example. Yeah.
I, by the way, this is my recording, I do own the rights to that sample now. So if you do hear it in any
You'll have
music,
to speak to
um,
Big Joe, the king of
uh,
Sanchonet.
you actually have yeah, you may have performing rights, but you don't have the recording rights.
Okay.
um, but anyway, glad we cleared up that uh,
So
little issue. But
I'd been around since 2021, and I'd been around in Cardano Stoners Club. I'd actually been around prior to that in Empower, in their in the Empower space. I was what I called myself, um, a community advocate in Empower, and I was given admin status in both their Telegram and Discord. It was fully voluntary, and I was answering questions around that. And then we parted ways once I felt like their direction had changed against what they said they were going to do. But we'll not get into that. Then I ended up on Stoners Club. But yeah, anyway, sorry. I'm talking far
No,
too much. Go ahead and
no.
ask your
Well, it
questions.
is an interview. Yeah, normally
Yeah.
I've got a problem where I talk too much. But
Ah,
so I mean, it's nice to hear you talk so positively about Cardano and stuff like that. But people do perceive your Twitter to be a little bit negative.
my what?
Um, I think you've been blocked by some people, maybe.
Oh well, Lucid, our chief hype officer, in the last couple of epochs, there blocked me. I have this terrible habit of being nuanced, as you've already experienced, right? So, so I tend to really want to get into the technical realities of things rather than the grand sweeping statements. And Lucid's account was it's very much a grand sweeping statement about what the future will be, but I'm very much about what the technical reality is right now. So whenever I see grand sweeping statements all over Twitter of people saying, we've never been down, for example, Cardano's never been down. And I'm like, well, actually, technically, Cardano went down for over 5 minutes at a time, multiple times over the last 2 months because of a thing called blocks from the future. And that's a known issue on GitHub that's been alive since like a year and a half ago. And it's finally been fixed. And I'm extremely happy that it has because it's going to stop this 5+ minute pause potential, which has happened. And I can point to specific slot numbers and block numbers where there's been a gap of over 5 minutes. And in that 5 minute gap, SPOs have lost out on revenue because they haven't been able to produce blocks. Cardano is not perfect.
I
It
mean,
is.
to be fair, though, from a Cardano sort of code is law perspective, um, you know, to say went down, the users were
Okay.
affected in the sense they might have had to wait 5 minutes for their transaction to go through, and that
Let's
could
put
have
it
been
this way.
a bit of a pain. But to worry about, we shouldn't really be caring about SPOs. We're here to serve the network. We're not here to.
SPOs are the lifeblood that makes the network actually operate.
Absolutely,
So
but
why should we not care about them? I don't
well, yeah,
understand your point.
I'm an SBO myself, but if I lost the block, I'd be like, "Pfft, I lost the block. Someone
Yes,
else
but if
got
you
it. You
realize
know,
that there was an
it
inherent,
wasn't lost. It wasn't. It didn't disappear from the SPO's ecosystem.
it did.
So some SPO got
No, no,
it.
no, it did. This is the point that people don't realize. There were multiple times, 5 minutes plus, where blocks were gone from the ecosystem, and there was no blocks produced in that 5+ minute period at all. Now they were produced by the block producers. They just weren't adopted because of this bug that is now being fixed. And I've just been trying to give people the technical reality of that, highlight that it needed fixed. It has been fixed. I'm very happy about that. But people's willingness to just ignore problems and say they don't exist and we've never had downtime. Let's put it this way: if you go to McDonald's and the McFlurry machine is down, can you get a McFlurry?
I mean, yeah, you might have to wait 5 minutes, but yeah, that could be a bit annoying
And
at a
if, if
drive-through.
it's if it's down and they're doing something with it, McDonald's is still open.
You might leave. Yeah, you probably leave.
McDonald's is
Yeah,
still open,
I get your
but
point.
you
Actually,
can't
it's a
get
good
that thing.
analogy. If the SBO is the one getting the McFlurry, they've drived up. There's no McFlurry. Oh, okay. I'll drive on, and then some, and then eventually, 5 minutes later, an SPO drives up, and he does get a McFlurry.
Man, the willingness of people to just go like, 5 minute pauses of blocks and not getting transactions through, that's fine. That's not a problem. But that was a problem and it has been fixed. I'm very, very glad it was fixed. But like to pretend it never happens, to pretend
Oh, I
we've
mean,
never
yeah.
had downtime, to pretend that people haven't lost revenue.
So going back to Shelley launch in the real early days, there was I'm pretty sure many had an issue because their clocks weren't aligned. So it seems weird that you can have this issue now that where people are setting their clocks ahead, essentially,
They're
if you think
drifting
about
out
it.
of place. I don't know if it was malicious on the part of the SPOs. I can't give agency or motive to people who did this. It just happened. It could be that they just didn't have proper clock synchronization set up and it just naturally went out of phase. But the end result was that there was a potential attack vector there, and luckily most people are honest actors on the Cardano ecosystem, and we didn't see it more often. But the potential was there, and that's what I was talking about, like the potential for things to be a lot more degraded in terms of quality of service because of this bug. And I was highlighting that the bug exists, and I was being told, "What are you talking about? It doesn't matter. We've never been down. McDonald's is still open." And I'm like, "Well, the McFlurry machine's broken, and that matters. People like McFlurries. People want their transactions to go through, and people like making revenue, making blocks." But
At least
yeah,
the burgers were still going out though. That's the main thing.
no, though. I mean, from my perspective, for 5 whole minutes at a time, nothing was happening on Cardano. No transactions were going through. No smart contracts were being fired off. Nothing was happening. I mean, yes, the network was still running, but nothing was being produced. And that, yeah, it's fixed. I'm happy. But
Mm.
yeah,
So you think so? You're saying, but you do more constructive criticism, and
yeah,
people are perceiving you to be negative when
yeah.
really you're still um,
I'm a
a
technical.
fan, but we've still got to question these things. And I think many
If
would
there's
agree with that sort of ideology.
Yeah, I think it comes from customer service based rules, right? And for so long, your whole job in my life was taking someone's question, finding a resolution, and making sure that problem is fixed. Or in setting up account systems like an asset management system, coming up with a proper way to record information and make sure it's accessible. And if anything is blocking access to the information or is blocking information being recorded, getting rid of that roadblock. And I prioritize fixing the problem than pretending it doesn't exist. And that's what I do. I will highlight what I view as being a potential problem. I'll not say, "Oh my God, it's catastrophic, the world's burning, we're all going to die." But I will say, "Here's an actual issue that needs to be addressed," and highlight that it does exist, and counter any narrative that says that it doesn't or never has. Because how useful is that? How useful is it to pretend like everything's hunky dory, 100%, never been a problem, when there's an existing long term, over a year problem that at that point hadn't been addressed? It has been addressed, and it only got addressed because in multiple SPO calls, people were bringing it up, and they only brought it up because they were affected by it. SPOs were missing blocks, people weren't getting transactions through. It came up as a more important issue because there was a real world example of the problem happening three times in a row in less than a month. So yeah, so so Lucid blocked me, not because of that though. It was a different thing. I'm a very Again, it all comes down to nuance. They were suggesting that the minimum attack vector of Cardano would rise naturally along with scalability. So as there's more transaction throughput and more ability for transactions to make it on chain and be processed, there will naturally be an increase in MAV. And I countered that and said, why? If the delegation doesn't change, why would that naturally increase the MAV? It would increase the throughput certainly, but it would still be under the control of the people who currently have the delegation. It doesn't just magically make MAV go up because transactions are faster. So I countered that narrative, and then I was blocked.
Oh right, okay. No, we've all been, I'm blocked by people too. It's the way it goes. I mean, what are your future plans?
That I'm moving into the world. I'm moving into the
Just
world
more of
mobile.
that, actually.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm moving into the world
No
mobile space.
specifics, just
Earth
more of
Earth
that.
node operators. I have a bunch of clients already. I have 8 clients set up
Nice.
that represent 21 ENOs at the moment. Now, obviously, we haven't got the mainnet
No.
Earth node
Do
operation yet, and things
we go
have.
into that? Do we go into that now?
I don't know how much we're allowed to go into that, but there's been delays, and people know. At
But I
least
mean, that's the Cardano way. Like, there's always been delays. So delays have
that's true.
never been a thing that frightened me,
No,
really. But
and I have the client. I have the client arrangement set up. I have one in Singapore. I have one in Bratislava. I have one in England. Um, A few in England, actually, in different places. But
To all the Adapulse, viewers as well, who are some are setting up, um, ENOs themselves, and you seem to be a good source of information. You've helped me out on
yeah,
numerous occasions. I think you've slowly
I've written a
become
step
my
by
sole
step guide.
source for. Um,
Whenever Aya Network, which is World Mobile's future chain network, Aya Network was originally going to be set up through Cosmos SDK from the Atom side of things. Um, I wrote step by step guides for people on a website with Nico, which we can share a link to maybe. But yeah, and it was a step by step guide that took people through the entire process of setting up your Earth node operator with a validator and with 2 Sentry nodes.
I know DRep or anything like that.
Oh,
Or
okay. So on the governance side of things, this is quite interesting. My
oh, so you
my
do have future plans,
my
right? Okay,
journey
we got
my
that fucking
journey
cleared up
my
eventually.
journey in governance has been an interesting one because I started off thinking I was going to abstain and only so I was going to delegate the auto abstain and only really move into the delegating to DRep side of things when there was an issue I was passionate or cared about. Then I realized that delegating the auto abstain removes all of my voting power completely from the network. And I'm like, oh, well, that's a bad idea because then, So I went to, okay, well, what can I do next? And I was like, well, I want to keep my influence on the network and make sure things don't change without me agreeing with them. So the next thing I thought was, I'll delegate to no confidence. So it'll always vote no on everything unless I change my mind and delegate to a DRep. And then I was thinking, but if I delegate to a DRep, if they've voted on multiple proposals at once, it's not necessarily the case that I'm going to agree with everything they voted on. So it would be a very selective process to find someone who thinks the way I do. And then I was like, okay, well, then this has led me down the path of I kind of have to register as a DRep because if I'm going to be this nuanced and thoughtful and, and fucky about what things are, then I kind of have to be involved directly and vote yes or
so,
no.
so with that, tell out the Adapulse viewers, in a basic explain like I'm five solution. What is a DRep?
A DRep is kind of like an SPO, but for governance decisions. So you can delegate your ADA because your ADA is non-custodial and doesn't actually get owned by the SPO. You can reuse its power for other things. So there's going to be a new thing set up, a whole branch of Cardano called the DReps, and the DRep are delegated representatives where you can delegate to your DRep as someone who votes for decisions about how the development of Cardano is going to change over time, whether or not parameters are changing, block sizes get increased, that kind of thing. And you can sort of delegate your ADA like you would to a stake pool and say, I want them to be my representative for voting because I don't have time to look at everything myself. So yeah, that's what a DRep is.
So what you're saying, you're putting yourself out there. This is your chance to plug.
Listen, I'm gonna when I become a DRep, if and when that happens, it seems very likely that it will happen. Yeah, I'll put up what my DRep ID is so you can look at my voting record and see what I think about things. But I'm not going to go out there and start shilling and saying delegate to me as your representative. There's no need. I'm part of the ecosystem. Small part. I don't have that much ADA. So I'll put my limited weight behind what I believe. And if people watch that voting record and start vibing with it and being like, oh, I agree with the way he looks at things. I like the way he votes. Then yeah, by all means delegate. But I'm not going to go chase your delegation or pretend to be anything other than somebody who's thinking about each thing that appears. So yeah, it's my chance to promote, but nah, not that interested.
So this brings me to my one last final question. Let's talk about price. Where do you think? Yeah, don't you roll your eyes at me. Let's
Uh-huh.
talk about this.
This year, I don't know. I had the opportunity, like everyone else did, over the bear market to buy in at 25 cents, and I didn't do it because I felt like the economy was going to fall apart and that things were going to get worse. Now we're at what 60 something cents. We've dropped again recently. 66 cents. So like I've missed a boat, but you know what? So what? There'll be another boat. But
You don't think this is? I mean, you just said it
I
dropped
still think the
66%.
economy
Is
is
that
going
not
to
a
have
boat?
some big problems in the near future, especially in America. I feel like that high rate of 5.5 has been a long tail. Like its influence hasn't really truly been felt. That the job markets haven't been knocked down as much as they would normally be with that much of an increase. That a lot of people may have had low interest loans as businesses that are expiring, and then when they go to renew, they're going to realize that they have to completely renew their budget because holy shit, the cost of lending at the moment, borrowing, sorry, at the moment is much higher than we planned for 5 years ago. So they're going to fire more and more people, and I feel like that might have a cascading effect, which I think may have a further effect on the cryptocurrency market. So it's more of that nuanced, willing to highlight the problems of the world and not just be like, yay, mentality. But the problem with it is I could be completely wrong and things could shoot up and I'm left behind. But you know what? I'll still be working away, making my commissions, and I'll get less of a lump sum increase in my value as a portfolio. But like, hey, it'll make my income more sustainable, at least in the short term, and then it'll crash again because life is like that.
Oh, crypto is like that. That's all it does. It goes up to the moon and back. Yeah, no. So that brings us to a close. So now you have been becoming a more prominent figure in the space. So now people have got to know you a little bit more. So a little bit more about your background, a little bit more about your behavior on Twitter. I think that's kind of important as well. So I mean, let's end it with I'm looking forward to hearing what your views are when it comes to being a DRep. But yeah, but thanks for coming on Adapulse, Johnny. No, it was great speaking with you. All right.
That's all right. Sorry for being so combative.
So yeah, and that was it. That's Johnny Kelly. So do give him a follow on Twitter if you want. It was IntertreeJK, and he is going to be a DRep by the sounds of it. So keep an eye out for what his views are, and if they're lying, yeah, maybe you might want to delegate with him. But I mean, yeah, that's up to you. So if you do like this video, do remember to give it a like and a subscribe and hit the bell button to get the notifications. And that's it. I'm Josh from ATM Stake Pool, your transfer for today, and I'll see you next time. Thank you.